The spotlight had never shaken Karoline Leavitt until now. In a moment no one saw coming, she stood before the cameras, her voice trembling and her eyes filled with tears. Something was different this time. The confident, outspoken figure we had come to know was suddenly vulnerable, her emotions raw as she revealed a shocking announcement about her husband. Was it a heartbreak? A life-changing decision? Or something even more unexpected? As the room fell silent, her words left everyone stunned. And now, the truth is finally coming out. What is this truth? Karoline Leavitt's journey to the national stage wasn't exactly what you'd call typical. She didn't grow up in a political dynasty or have a straight path paved for her. Instead, she was a small-town girl from New Hampshire, raised in a family that ran an ice cream shop and a used truck dealership. But even back then, there was something about Karoline. She had drive, ambition, and a voice she wasn't afraid to use. Fast forward to college, and that fire only grew stronger. While most students were simply trying to get through midterms, Karoline was making headlines by writing bold op-eds defending Trump's policies and even starting her school's first broadcasting club. She wasn't just another student with opinions, she was making sure people heard them. And people did hear them. Big names took notice, leading her straight into conservative politics. A Fox News internship became a gig at the White House, where she worked directly under Kayleigh McEnany. From there, she became a powerhouse in political communications, serving as Representative Elise Stefanik's communications director. In a world where young voices often struggle to break through, Karoline didn't just break through, she ensured no one could ignore her. But today, we're seeing a different side of her. The firm, confident Karoline is in tears, stepping in front of the cameras with a massive announcement about her husband. And trust me, no one saw this coming. Karoline's career wasn't without its challenges. One such moment occurred after she was newly elected. The press room was buzzing, and you could almost hear the unspoken skepticism hanging in the air. The youngest White House press secretary in history was about to take the podium, and expectations weren't exactly sky-high. Some figured she'd play it safe, stick to the script, and maybe stumble. Others assumed she'd be nervous, overwhelmed by the moment. But then, she stepped up, and from the second she started speaking, it was clear she wasn't here to play by the old rules. Her first briefing lasted 47 minutes, an eternity by opening day standards. But it wasn't just the length that got people talking, it was how she handled it. There was no tiptoeing around tough questions, no carefully worded non-answers. Instead, she met the press head-on, challenging their narratives, calling out bias, and clearly stating that she wasn't just another spokesperson, she was in control. Even NBC's Peter Alexander pushed her with tough questions, perhaps expecting her to slip. But she didn't. She held her ground, answering with confidence, never once looking rattled. The skeptics had walked in expecting inexperience to show, but instead, they saw someone who knew exactly what she was doing. This moment didn't happen by accident. Karoline had been preparing for it long before she ever stood at that podium. Back in New Hampshire, at St. Anselm College, she was already studying the game, learning how politics and media work together. That knowledge took her to the Trump White House, where she worked as an assistant press secretary before becoming the national press secretary for his 2024 campaign. She wasn't just along for the ride, she was learning, adapting, and proving herself in one of the most challenging political environments. But what set her apart wasn't just her confidence, it was her strategy. She saw the media landscape shifting. Traditional news outlets were losing their grip, while independent voices, podcasters, social media influencers, and non-traditional journalists were reaching more people than ever. Instead of fighting that change, she leaned into it. She didn't waste time trying to win over legacy media, she took the administration's message straight to the platforms where people were listening. This wasn't just about a fresh face at the podium, it was about a complete shift in how the White House communicated with the public. From day one, Karoline clarified that she was redefining the role of press secretary. For years, White House press briefings had been dominated by the same legacy media outlets and reporters asking the same questions. But when Leavitt took over, that all changed. Suddenly, conservative influencers, podcast hosts, and independent digital voices had a seat at the table. The political elite found Karoline Leavitt's approach to be a shocking move. To her, however, it was just common sense. Millions of Americans weren't tuning into traditional news anymore, so why should the White House ignore them? Whether people liked it or not, her approach worked. Even White House Communications Director Stephen Chung called her first press conference the most successful ever. That one statement sent Washington, D.C., into a frenzy. The old model, where mainstream media controlled the narrative, was dead. Of course, not everyone was a fan. Leavitt had already been a controversial pick, but the scrutiny wasn't just about her politics. Her personal life became just as much of a headline. She married Nicholas Rio, a 59-year-old real estate mogul 32 years her senior. People had opinions, many of them were harsh. Was it love? Was it a strategy? Some saw it as a scandal, while others couldn't care less. Either way, the noise didn't faze her. She had bigger things to worry about. And then, the world flipped upside down. Trump's survival wasn't just another wild political moment to her. Trump rally in Butler, Pennsylvania. The energy was resilience, determination, and sheer stubbornness could keep you standing, even when the world tried to knock you down. A bullet struck Donald Trump. If he could take a bullet and service agents swarmed the area, what excuse did she have to quit? Supporters screamed as he was bleeding, but jumping back into politics while juggling a newborn didn't just shake the country. It changed everything for Leavitt. 1 minute she was facing off against her on a completely different podium, and the next, she wasn't in the crowd that day. Her baby even remembered what she looked like. She wasn't even in Washington. Leaving her child every day was heartbreaking. Rocking her newborn son. It does break your heart, she admitted. She had turned on the rally like it was just another campaign event. Not a chance. Then suddenly, she was watching history unfold in real time, unable to do anything. She had a secret weapon, frozen. Her husband, Nicholas Rio, played on an endless loop. The guy wasn't one her like a freight train, but behind the scenes, she was a new glue holding cradling this tiny, fragile life. While she tackled the chaos of political fighter, he was at home making sure their son was fed. She knew this wasn't just about and hopefully not already plotting his escape from the crib. So lucky she made a decision. His business job allowed him to step up in ways most people never saw. She turned to her husband assassination and said, attempt had rattled the country, but for Leavitt, 4 days. It was a gut check. That's all she reminded her why she chose this path. After giving birth, sacrificed she was back most people took for granted, in the fight, and why stepping away just the public was stunned. So how could she stood in front of the press just days after one of the most terrifying moments in modern politics? Her baby was barely just holding it together. But for Leavitt, she was doubling down. The answer was simple. The president no one realized something more personal would come to light beneath. She later said, "The least I could do was get back to work." She wasn't just balancing motherhood and politics. Some called it loyalty. She was about to drop a bombshell about her husband. It was just doing what had to be done. In the world of politics, every relationship gets analyzed like it's a detective case. Her marriage to Nicholas Rio had people raising eyebrows. But unlike the usual power couple pairings you see in D.C., theirs wasn't based on career moves or political alliances. They met at a political event, one of those stuffy, high-energy gatherings where everyone shakes hands, makes power moves, and pretends they are not exhausted. She was already on the rise, totally in her element. Meanwhile, Rio, a real estate mogul with more money than most people could dream of, had zero interest in playing the political game. The guy barely even spoke to the press, let alone cared about making headlines. Yet, when a mutual friend introduced them, and something just clicked. On paper, they made no sense. She was young, ambitious, and thrived on public attention, while he was 32 years older, allergic to social media, and couldn't have cared less about the latest Twitter drama. He had none, no Instagram, no Twitter, no LinkedIn, not even a Facebook page for old time's sake. For someone with his level of influence, that was unheard of. But where others saw a mismatch, they saw balance. She commanded rooms and made waves. He was the quiet strategist, excellent at watching from the sidelines. Their relationship wasn't just unconventional, it was the kind that made people talk. Some didn't get it, some loved it, but for them, it just worked. People couldn't stop talking about it. The age gap wasn't just a passing comment, it became the conversation. Social media exploded with opinions, and not the subtle kind. Some called it opportunistic, others doubted it was real. Whenever she posted a picture with Rio, the comment section became a free-for-all. "Is that your dad?" one person mocked. Another went straight for the jugular. "Your husband could be your grandfather, and yet you judge everyone else?" But she wasn't having it. No long-winded defenses, no dramatic clapbacks, just quiet, unshakable confidence. "He's my #1 fan, the best dad, and the best man I've ever met," she wrote. If people thought they could embarrass her into silence, they had no idea who they were dealing with. While the internet dissected their every move, she and Rio were busy living their lives privately, intentionally, and without
never
the need for an audience. By the time people learned his name, no magazine already a multimillionaire. Just two people who knew exactly what they had. Nobody expected. Even their engagement just about making money. Rhythm. They became something more. Christmas Day 2023, meeting in their home, a quiet but powerful force in conservative circles, and that was that. While others were making noise, she shared one photo of Rio on one knee, yet a diamond reflecting the winter light. He never stepped into the limelight, the best Christmas of my life, and never felt the need to prove anything. I get to marry the man of my dreams. Because the most influential people aren't the ones making the most noise, no performative they're the ones pulling the strings without anyone realizing it. Their wedding was the same. Most men in his position would be flashing their wealth, opt for making sure the world headline-grabbing ceremonies. Theirs was not Nicholas Rio. It was entirely out of the public eye, gave no TED Talks about no exclusives, and posed no mysterious anonymous sources. Rio was quietly moving pieces behind the scenes. She didn't even post a wedding announcement. He wasn't interested in just updated her bio. He was interested in results. Wife. And somehow, needless to say, that made him the marriage didn't slow them down. It kicked one of his properties, for example. She stepped into one of the most demanding real estate investment, while Rio kept running his real estate empire, hosting women for Trump gatherings that had a profound attention-seeking moments. But Rio wasn't just some deep-pocketed donor writing checks from the comfort of his office. He stayed exactly where he wanted to be, making sure his success meant something. But that didn't mean his presence wasn't felt. Unlike the billionaires who couldn't resist name-dropping their political by returning to work just 4 days after giving birth, people had magazine covers, no carefully curated How is that even possible? They asked. The man barely existed was online. Simple. Rio. It was almost impressive. While she faced the press, he was at while, ensuring their newborn son had until his marriage to Karoline Leavitt pulled him straight into the spotlight. Her greatest supporter, not by choice. The man who gave everything and asked for nothing. Social media had a field day with their age gap. What nobody realized was how much he had sacrificed. The comments were ruthless. His role wasn't just that of the supportive husband standing in the background, it had to be transactional, nodding along like a well-dressed extra. But here's what they didn't get: their marriage wasn't built on optics. And when she finally broke down and revealed the truth about him, and an understanding that in their world, stability at Nicholas Rio had been carrying something no one saw coming. While Karoline took on one of the most high-pressure political spotlight, Rio ensured their home life was just that. While she made history as the youngest White House press secretary, and when their son stayed behind the scenes was where he was most comfortable. He didn't hesitate. People assumed he was just another wealthy businessman, not because he had made all the right moves, but because he wanted to. But his story wasn't what for a man who had built everything from nothing. Before the shifting priorities, before the millions, some grand sacrifice, before the political influence, it was just what you do when you're all in. While most kids were stressing over college applications, tried to avoid attention. The truth had a way of catching up. He had no backup plan, no safety net. When Karoline finally let the world, you can always come home. It was enough to leave even the most seasoned political insiders stunned. And while most people in that position would have been focused on survival, Rio saw an opportunity. How was she juggling an all-consuming career, a newborn, he worked relentless pressure with no connection without barely any money, falling apart, saving every dollar he could. She had returned to work by the early 2000s after giving birth. Run-down properties in Hampton While Beach, some called it inspiring, others questioned how she was managing it at all. To everyone else, one day, they were a lost cause.to Rio. Standing in front of a room full of reporters, composed, he started professional, buying every bit the press secretary wanted, Karoline suddenly and turning them into highly sought-after She took rentals. A deep breath, steadied herself. Every cent he made went straight back into his business. She let the mask slip. By 2005, I've been asked many times how I've managed to balance this job, 17 rental units, and everything that reputation as someone who saw value where others uncharacteristically raw. Then his empire expanded. I couldn't have done any of this his company, without my Rio husband. Enterprises LLC, and just like that, across New the man who had spent the years in the shadows became impossible to ignore, turned them into something valuable. For all the speculation about their relationship, no one had understood the whole story. Nicholas Rio wasn't just a successful businessman or a quiet political force, he was the anchor that ensured their family didn't fall apart under the weight of her career. At that moment, Karoline clarified just how much he had sacrificed. Long before their son was even born, Rio had made a choice. No headlines captured it, and no political strategists advised it. He did what needed to be done. He stepped back, shifted his entire schedule, and ensured their family didn't miss a beat when Karoline returned to work. When I told Nicholas the first wanted to return to work as soon as possible, he didn't hesitate, she admitted. He just said, "We'll figure it out." And he did. She talked about the guilt, the heartbreak of leaving her son every day, and how there were moments when it felt unbearable. And every single time, Rio was there, not with empty words, but with quiet, unwavering support. Reassurances or some vague, "you got this," pep talk, but with action. Knowing that Nicholas was with his father, knowing that he was there every step of the way, that's what made this possible for her. And just like that, the narrative changed. Nicholas Rio wasn't just a wealthy businessman or the elusive husband in the background, he was the reason the whole operation worked. He had built an empire, sure, but his most significant investment, the one thing that truly set him apart, was what he had been quietly giving every single day without expecting anything in return. Then came the press conference that changed everything. Leavitt, known for her composure, teared up as she admitted just how much her husband had given up for their family. At that moment, the usual political script was thrown out the window. This wasn't about competition or one person's career overshadowing the other. It was about partnership, about truly having each other's backs. The media, of course, had a field day. Was she setting an impossible standard for working moms? Or was she proving that women in power don't have to choose between ambition and family?